Good morning. Man, this thing is all the way on. You all are going to be so disappointed because I have amazing talking points, but I don't have my glasses. So we'll figure out how we get through those. But first, I want to say welcome to each and every one of you. My name is Isaiah Oliver. Al is going to give me his glasses, so I might be able to make it through. Isaiah Oliver, I'm president at the Community Foundation for Northeast Florida. I often say that means I lead an amazing organization that has its focus on engaging people in the art of philanthropy. This idea of giving time and talent and treasure, testimony, ties, and trust to make communities better places to live in and work in and contribute to. And today I'm excited, not only because we're celebrating our 60th anniversary, but because today, May 1st, I'll take that. I'm gonna double down on that because today, May 1st, is our actual birthday. So everyone say a big yay for the Community Foundation. It was May 1st, 1964, that a resolution was passed to declare the trust be created as the Greater Jacksonville Area Community Foundation, the best community foundation in the country. Everybody knew that? So funny story. Where's one? I wasn't gonna tell the story. It's gonna be short though. So funny story. I learned that this was the best community foundation in the country. One, everybody knows there's over 950 community foundations spread across the country, over 1,200 all over the world. This community foundation, for a small period of time, its name was the Community Foundation. That's it. The people in this town made a decision that this was not only the best community foundation, but the community foundation, the only community foundation for a short period of time. But I'll tell you, over 60 years, 724 unique funds, $655 million in assets, $70 million in grants last year, with $90 million in gifts. The Community Foundation is really stepping into full stride. And a special thanks to folks like you all who continue over and over again to support not only this community, but support this community through your local community foundation. So yes, thank you to each and every one of you. You can give yourselves a hand. One thing that Tom will always remind us that donor education is a core tenet of the Community Foundation, stimulating philanthropy to build a better community or connecting generosity to community need. And so this is an amazing opportunity for us to partner with local community leaders who do the work, who are most proximate to the problems and issues and the innovations, and really work with them to better understand how we fill gaps appropriately in the social safety net. And so it's an amazing opportunity to be here, and we would not be here if not for the amazing gift of the Lucy Gooding Foundation. I don't know that we have partners from Lucy Gooding here today, but they've offered an amazing grant to the Community Foundation to support doing this work consistently over and over again. So please give them a hand. And now that I've asked you all to clap your hands several times, I got one last one. I'm going to introduce our partner in this work today. I would say a proud Paxson graduate, a UNF graduate, and top two Family Feud players I've ever met in my life. She and I are the top two Family Feud players I've ever met in my life, and I'm not number two. Everybody give a warm welcome to Whitney Myers.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Whitney Meyer, and I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief Community Impact Officer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I am the best Family Feud player. It was Isaiah, let me rewind. For those of you who do not know what we're talking about, it was not the real Family Feud. We were not hanging out with Steve Harvey, okay? It was here. It was a fundraiser for KIPP schools, and they do an annual Family Feud fundraiser where they pair local leaders against each other. And Isaiah and Melanie Patz, who's also here. Melanie, where are you at? Right there? Yes. They were on this. Okay, just for the record, I was the best. I'm the one who got my question right, okay? And I was against Isaiah at the moment. But again, a lot of fun on that night, but just had to clear the air and let y'all know who really was number one. But in all seriousness, happy birthday. I did not know that today was the Community Foundation birthday, so happy birthday. On behalf of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I just want to give a warm welcome. We're so happy you're here. A lot of people know our space as, a few times a year you come on and you root for your favorite hometown team, but we know with having an NFL franchise here, there's so many benefits that come with that. And today I'm really excited for you all to hear and learn more about some of the organizations that we support and that are really close, not just physically to us, but close to us as a foundation to support. So we're really excited. And I hope all of you save enough time to get a good tour at the end as well. Just a little fun fact about what we've been doing in the month of April. Yes, draft was last week, and I hope all of you are really excited about the picks. I had nothing to do with that, just for the record. I was not in the war room. I was having fun with all of our friends all around the stadium and on the field there. But April is also a volunteer month, and so we really challenged all of our employees to volunteer at multiple events. And I'm happy to say that our internal staff on the business side, so about 100 people, we volunteered 740 hours just in the month of April. So we're really excited about that. Thank you for the claps. But for us, we know it's not just about the giving that you give financially, but also the power and the people that come with it. And so for us, we're really proud of that and have many ways that we make sure not just our players get involved in the community, but also our professional and business staff. So again, welcome. We are so happy you are here. And now I'd like to invite one of my close friends, Diana Donovan, to the stage, Executive Director of the Cultural Council. Let me tell you, I've known Diana for many years, and you are in for a treat if you have never seen her speak. And Diana, I know Jacksonville is a much better place because leaders like you are here, and we appreciate all that you do for the Cultural Council. So welcome.
Good to see you. Just a little bit taller. All right. Good morning, everyone. I just want to first start by honoring my hosts. The Community Foundation has no doubt had a long legacy. A warm, happy birthday as well. But we're nothing without the people who have helped build us throughout the community, throughout the decades, whether it's time, talent, or treasure. It really is built on the shoulders of the next, there's the next generation forward, and then there's people, the legacy makers who've made it happen. So I want to thank you to everyone in the room who's helped support the Community Foundation. And I also want to recognize current leadership. I think one of my favorite things about Isaiah when I first met him at the Jack's Chamber trip is his intentionality and wanting to create real and deep relationships with everyone he met. And while he and I have been building together, it's been exciting to see how well he carries himself, the character that he has, and the true passion for Jacksonville. For us to be able to recruit someone of that level, caliber, and talent and retain them in Jacksonville, and you'll hear more on why arts and culture help with retainment of talent. I think it's huge for him to be here. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be here and share our story, our updates, and how we connect to downtown impact today with some of our partners and 2 CSGs that will be on the panel. And then I also want to thank Whitney and the Jaguars Foundation. Very early on in my role, people stepped up and said, we believe in what you're doing and what we're doing together. And they were able to partner with us to bring the first Hispanic Latinx mural to a DCPS school where the majority was dual language speaking, and they were having challenges in that school at that time with acceptance and cultural inclusion. And we were able to hire a local artist funded by the Jaguars Foundation in partnership with the First Coast Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to go through a community-driven process to have a beautiful piece of artwork that represented all the shades of what it means to be Latinx. And not just on the outside where we think about public art, but public art on the inside in the main hallway area. And it was a really transformational piece. And I say lovingly, there was the wink of a Jaguar in the background. They specifically did not ask for logo, but we got to love them through it and to it. And so when I'm looking at Jaguars leadership, that was the first time we got to step into that space. And Whitney really allowed us with Adriel, who is a former board member of ours, to really lean into what it means. And then the next chapter of that was that we were able to have the opportunity to partner with the beautiful public art you see outside the training facility for Miller Electric. And that was a really exciting process. And they were very intentional in not just having international talent for international city recognition, national talent for national city recognition, but intentional local talent cultivation. And that's important because when we put our local players and our local talent in the same pool as a national or an international artist, that's how we build recognition for our city, and that's how we build craft. So the ability to support not just a local artist, but to keep our fabricators, installers, all of that close within the Northeast region, that keeps that economic impact within us. So I just want to take a moment to thank the Jaguars Foundation and the Community Foundation and some of the areas that we're seeing alignment and building relationships in this next chapter. More art culture. The Cultural Council of Greater Jacksonville has meant a lot of things to a lot of people. It's had some evolutions of its time. It's had some exciting moments, and it's had some funding opportunities. And I was just sharing with another partner. I see Miss Courtney Wilson, who's a former board member who I just got to meet. We went through a recent rebranding. And the reason I want to show you this, and you can see the circles up there, is that we wanted to show that community impact through arts and culture is an ecosystem, and everything connects to everything. It's not seen as one section where you're going through a strategic plan and you think infrastructure, public safety, arts and culture. We are the umbrella that touches each one. And when you see a circle like this, it can be a ripple where you have one drop and it ripples out, or it can be a reverberation that is felt. And it's not always something that you can see or quantify in quality of life, but you can feel it resounding. The other intentionality around this branding was more as an abundance mindset, more art, more culture, more business, more art, more culture, more healing, more art, more culture, more healthcare, right? These things that initially tie together is meant to be an intentional connecting point, but also the reversal of a mindset. We know that culture is mindset. The Jaguars have a mindset. The team, when they go on, they have a mindset. The crowd, when they get excited or sassy, they have a mindset, right? And that's culture that we build. And the pride that we have in our organizations, the pride that we have in how we give back, in our giving as donors. When we give, we want to know where our funding goes. Where's that transparency? Where's my dollar going, and how is it being extended or exceeded or matched? When we think about that, we have to think about it as a more abundance mindset. And the reason I share that was because when we started in this role together, been in this role just over 3 years now. It was during COVID. And the city of Jacksonville almost lost our cultural identity. Some of our largest cultural institutions almost closed their doors. And I can tell you that because at that time, I was serving on the Cultural Service Grant Committee, evaluating the Florida Theater, who is in a beautiful place right now. Their revenue is astronomical. Their capital infrastructure is dynamic. NUMA has changed the game for the Florida Theater in a lot of ways and been a huge leader in our community. But during COVID, we were having conversations like, how long do we have to close? How many years? How many decades? What does this mean? We don't have the ticket revenue that we used to have. And it shined a real light on how sustainable our arts and culture businesses are as nonprofits. And so as we grappled with this, we were at the same funding the Cultural Council was as we were at 20 years ago. $2.25 million being divided among 30 plus organizations for operating grants. That's not a lot when you think about all of the revenue being generated by these organizations on a daily basis. So we have the same funding as we were at 20 years ago. We're in COVID, a pandemic, a financial crisis, and we're evaluating all these organizations. And I was interim. And we had a conversation and we said, how do we bring stability, consistency, and competency? And my favorite word is care. How do we build a culture of care? How do we have the mayor's office care and understand what we're doing? How do we have city council care and understand what we're doing? And how do we elevate the funding around that? In those 3 years, we went from $2.25 million in just operating grants to $8.25 million in operating and capital grants. Those capital grants started at $250,000, match 1-for-1, went to $500,000, match 1-for-1, to $1 million, match 1-for-1. And so we've seen steady increases in that. And that funding came from asking our grantees, what do you need? And one of the number one items they said was capital infrastructure. Now, I don't know about you, but there has never been a time where I have wanted to sit in a theater in July without AC. So as we're thinking about these things, sometimes they can feel like the least sexy items, but they are the most critical for revenue generating opportunities, for driving that creative economic engine, and also still enhancing quality of life. With that side of the Cultural Service Grant Program, city-funded advocacy, that $8.25 million, the increase in the operating, the increase in the capital, we also had to do a Hail Mary during COVID, and we were able to solidify CARES Act funding for $850,000 to get out to the community. So we've had a lot of historical investments in the past 3 years. We're at the highest funding level we've ever been, and we are just getting started. So we're excited about what that means, but I wanted to share that with you because if you've been with us for a while and you've known this organization and you know the ups and downs that we have had, I want to let you know that we are on an upward trajectory and we are maximizing our talent and potential right now. And that's by making the platform not about me or about the Cultural Council, but about you and about the communities and the organizations and the nonprofits. I'm looking at Alan and Alistair as two of our CSGs, and then the man, the myth, the Orleck here helping, which maybe could be potential of CSG, being able to fund them in the long term. The other thing that I wanted to be able to share with you is public art investment, right? We talked a little bit about public-private partnerships with the Jaguars practice facility. The other side of that is being intentional in how it helps with infrastructure, how it helps with reducing blight, public safety, community awareness, community pride, civic engagement, civic development. All of these things happen when you decide to say, this place matters. You're going to choose what goes here. You're going to be a part of this process. You're going to choose it. And then we're going to elevate it and put investment into your community because of this art piece. And I share that with you because the other historical investments we've had is almost $650,000 championed by a former city council member to be divided among every district. That's the first equity in arts, public art investment we've had with city funding 2 years ago. We also just confirmed in December $150,000 of CPAC funding to be divided among the 6 CPACs for bringing art to community improvement areas. And then last but not least, we've had some very intentional private-public partnerships. So I'm looking at Florida Blue and our friend Susan and Darnell, of course. And one of the conversations we had was bringing a kinetic piece to Brooklyn, local artist infrastructure, and wanting to elevate not just a local artist, but a representative artist in the community and giving them the chance and the opportunity to build their CV, to be paid for it, and to lean into their community. And it was a beautifully done project and a beautiful partnership between public and private. FIS is another partner. JTA has been at the forefront. Nat Ford, when we think about the internal beautiful public art that you see on the outside and then the actual gallery on the inside, we were able to help facilitate that project management to bring local artists that look like our community into that facility. And he said, this matters, I care, and I want it here. During COVID, we'd also had to pivot. And so from a financial standpoint, we were able to open up our first ever art gallery called Art Seed Shop. So if you were there and you patroned, thank you. 60% of the proceeds went back to the local artist. It was entirely local artists of all different backgrounds. We intentionally were extended 3 times. We were able to use November through June to activate every celebratory heritage month that we had to bring in people from the community, artists from the community conversations and healing. It was a really transformational space. And then we got kicked out for something a little more cultural, Spirit Halloween, but we hold no grudges. But I share that with you because that was a beautiful demonstration of how we step up as a community and we make something happening and we make a creative economic revenue opportunity out of nothing because a corporate partner said, I have space for this, I can do this. My bottom line can handle this and it's the right thing to do. And so as we're maximizing, I'm sharing these examples with you just so you know our character, the character of the organization, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to serve, and how we're trying to intentionally build. Before you can ask someone to give, you have to come with receipts. And so I wanted to come with you to share, here's the work we've been doing, here's the historical investments, but also when we talk about who we are as a city, how does that impact downtown? How does it impact our partners downtown, public and private? And also how does it impact revitalization and quality of life? When we talk about recruiting big businesses here, the first question they ask is, where do we eat, stay, and play? And that's not just visitor recruitment, because we love our partners at Visit Jax, and we love what they're trying to do to enhance cultural tourism. But it's even more important for us to lean into this next chapter of how do we look at the numbers? So knowing that I might have a few numbers people in this group, I'm seeing Nancy even write down as we're speaking. I have some numbers for you on downtown impact to help share with you from the grantee perspective, our cultural service grant program, what's happening. We serve 30 plus nonprofit organizations that are mission and business centric in arts and culture. Out of those, overall, our economic impact for fiscal year 22 to 23 was $114 million plus dollars. Last year, it was $103 million. The increase of the city giving us $3 million more in funds drove us from an economic creative driver impact from $103 million to $114 million. Out of that, this year, $105 million out of 114 is downtown focused. So we are a huge heartbeat within the downtown area. And I can't help but think about the 2020 and the struggles and the conversations we had if we didn't have those endowments to keep them alive, if we didn't have the capital infrastructure funding, and if we weren't able to get CARES Act funding and city partnership. So as we think about this moving forward, I just want you to know the gravity of the economic impact from just a nonprofit sector. When we think about Florida Theater and we think about their impact in the community, I'm going to use one example that Numa and I have talked about often. One day open, you have the Uber drivers that are getting paid. You have the parking attendants that are getting paid. You have the bars and the bartenders and the restaurant owners. You have, the police that are getting paid. You have the public safety and the safe security officers that are getting paid. You have the people that are inside serving food getting paid. You have the people working backstage getting paid. You have the actual musicians and performers getting paid. You have all of these people and these jobs, part-time and full-time, being activated with just one opening night. So when we think about the Jaguars and we think about Mosh and we think about the Jacksonville Historical Society, knowing where we were, where we are, and where we're going, and we think about the Orleck, that is a great example of leaning into placemaking and placekeeping. Our identity as a city is predominantly military. We have a strong military population. How do we elevate them? How do we honor them? But also, how do we bring in people who are not military to understand? And cultural change comes from experience and exposure. So as we share a few more numbers with you, the amount of annual members and donors is 28,934 in the fiscal year 22 to 23. Out of that 28,000, 25,000 are annual donors located downtown. Volunteer hours downtown, 71,000 from our nonprofits and CSGs. 347 vendors and independent contractors served. And then also, one of the numbers we wanted to share with you is the youth benefiting. When we think about who we are as a community, the number one conversation I have with people thinking about Jacksonville is, I want my child to come back and stay here, live here, grow here. And so when we talk about youth benefit, it's school-based and non-school-based, 368,792. So we are standing at the forefront of championing arts and culture and quality of life for children and families, as well as downtown activation and education opportunities. We know the power of having more than one event. The other item I'd like to see is I'm looking at Mark Walker. We talk about the power of 10, right? When you have one event, there's an impact there. But what happens when you have multiple events happening at the same time? When people say there's nothing to do in Jacksonville, that is simply not true. And so as we talk about downtown impact, when you have a night where you have this side of the downtown activated with what we think of as traditional sports entertainment. And then you have the Jacksonville Symphony, having Symphony in 60 with young professionals being recruited down here from their 20s to 30s. People coming down from New York City and Raleigh and Charlotte and Philadelphia, all of these like northeastern cities coming down because they want our culture here. And we stand in the gap for every other county in the Northeast. The Cultural Council did an intentional investment to cover the nonprofit survey for AFTA. It's called America for the Arts, for all of the other nonprofits in the Northeast Florida area. We are one of the strongest ordinance mandated organizations, as well as, as a nonprofit, as well as one of the strongest economic drivers in the Northeast region. So what does that give us? Well, a lot of great things, but also responsibility. Responsibility to lead, responsibility to collaborate, and responsibility to partner. So when we think about downtown activation, thinking of it not just as what is downtown, and this is just the downtown sector, it's how do we bring people downtown, how do we leverage Duval to come downtown, but how do we also look at our partnering counties? When Clay County has almost 30,000 people moving to them in multiple months, what are they doing there for a cultural activation? I'm sure they have pop-ups, I'm sure they have galleries and have a smaller level lift. But if we were to able to leverage what's happening downtown to get them here, to get them to stay here and play here, people going to Baker County to stay overnight to come up for a Jags game, there is a clear synergy when we think about sports, entertainment, arts and culture, and quality of life, not just in economic drivers, but in changing the landscape. When we talk about cross-sector involvement in downtown, just to name a few, healthcare, children's education, mental health, STEM and STEAM, preservation, and performance. And so when we think about these sectors and we think about elevating them, this is not just one area that's impacted, it's a dollar that's being spread among sectors. And then the last item that I wanted to share with you as we talk about event-related revenue generating. From my fabulous AFTA, America for the Arts. Thank you for hanging with me with all these numbers, but I know you're crunchers, so I'm appreciative to give you something to crunch on. Event-related spending by arts and culture audiences totaled $188.4 million in the Northeast region. That's huge. And it's transformational. And we are one of the largest economic drivers in that. And so now is the time to help invest to run with that potential, but also to have the harder conversations of what we would like to call community and civic vibrancy. The Nonprofit Center has some incredible numbers that have recently come out about intentional investments and some numbers on evaluation of where to invest when it comes to community and civic vibrancy. I have long believed that Jacksonville is a show, don't tell city. The joke of renderings, like we've seen a million renderings, what's actually happening, what's actually going on downtown, are there gonna be things? We're a show, don't tell city. We showed Jack's River Jams, we showed it was a success. Funders like the Jesse and Mari said, we believe in you. ViStar said, we believe in you. They gave funding, and then now look what we have, a huge downtown activation at the same time as a draft day, at the same time as a Florida theater event, at the same time of X and Y and Z, right? Having this power of 10 multiplier effect of learning to say, we can have multiple things happening and everyone benefits. And once you show people what you can do, they'll invest and continue to come to the downtown area. So as we invest in these experiences and cultural experience and exposure, it's something that I think is not just a transformational process, but it leads to the desired outcomes that we can quantify. So last but not least, I just want to share a few thoughts on the Van Gogh, Tut, and Monet exhibit that you may or may not have visited. The power of pop-ups and placemaking is huge. And the power of choosing spaces and places that are underserved or undesired and bringing cultural deserts into cultural paradises, we shall say, or at least a minimum placemaking activation points is critical. So as we look at downtown and we look at a mosh coming in and we look at what they're going to mean, how they're going to serve, and the community spaces and places that they're going to hold and the altruistic areas there and the capital infrastructure investments, we also have to think about how are we helping to elevate other communities and other nonprofits that have not been seen or heard? And how do we help give our platform away to them to help them understand that we have a huge third largest Filipino population in Jacksonville? Where are they attending? Where are they going? Where are they seeing art that looks like them, right? And so as we're thinking about these cultural activations and we're thinking about downtown, not only is it a huge economic revenue generator when you have a whole population of people start believing and caring and attending, but you have a quality of life, you have an understanding, and you have a cultural experience and exposure that helps you understand, now I can find the things about you that make me human, and that make you human, and that make us better. So as we talk about downtown activation, and we talk about the downtown impact numbers, and we talk about the importance of aligning around a centered voice, we all have a lot of ideas of how we get there, but I think the main goal is making sure that quality of life is at the center of all of them. So thank you for allowing me to take your time today to share these things with you, to elevate our nonprofits in the sector that we share, and to elevate and appreciate our partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. That was incredible and critical framing for what we are now going to experience over the course of 3 separate presentations from local projects that are happening in our community right now. So first up, we're going to welcome Dr. Alan Bliss from the Jacksonville History Center. And you'll note on the slide right now, this may look and feel a little different than what you're used to. What we've asked each of our presenters to do is to restrict their presentations to 20 slides that will each advance after 20 seconds, giving them a total of 6 minutes and 40 seconds to introduce you to their project. So Alan is being the brave soul assigned by me, so it was voluntold, that he is going to be the first to lead us through this exercise. Let's give it up for Dr. Alan Bliss.
Well, thanks to Tom for that introduction. He might have added that my job is the best job in Jacksonville because I get to meet so many interesting people and learn so much about this endlessly interesting story, this endlessly interesting city. I argue in many of my public presentations that Jacksonville has more and more interesting and significant history than any place else in the state of Florida. We do less with that than our peer cities do in Florida. And why that should be is always an interesting conversation. But my organization, the Jacksonville History Center, is the only professional public history organization serving all of Duval County, and so it's our job to remedy that. History is not just about looking back, but it is about inspiring a sense of Jacksonville as a place, and that inspires citizenship and cultivates a greater sense of investment in the city's future. Citizenship is at the core of our educational mission, as reflected here. We do our work on in part by managing 4 historic buildings on 2 campuses downtown, the easternmost of which you can see through the windows at the right. You see the steeple of our old St. Andrew's Church. The illustration here shows our western campus, which is just on the other side of the arena, and incorporates 2 buildings, including this 1878 vintage hospital, the first building built in Florida to be a hospital on the east side of in the Sports and Entertainment District. This 146-year-old building is our present headquarters, the site of our archives, research library, and most of the work that we do from day to day. It's also a model of some of what we advocate for in historic preservation. You can see the original illustration of the building, its demolition in progress before it came into its present state that allows it to be usable every day. This image is from our photo archives. It is a glass plate negative taken by Leah Mary Cox, and it is part of a collection of over 100,000 images of Jacksonville in our collection. A endlessly interesting project of cataloging and assigning metadata all by itself. Old St. Andrew's Church, the steeple is visible, as I mentioned, out the windows to the east. The house next to it was the original family home of the James Merrill family, famous for James Merrill Stevens Shipbuilding, Jacksonville's largest industrial employer through the mid-20th century. And that house and the church are both in use every day, as they have been by us for the past 20-plus years. We use the church for many things, including the annual gingerbread extravaganza, now in its 21st year as a beloved Jacksonville tradition. Families come back, bring their children, and now we see the grandchildren of people showing up every December, and they challenge us if anything is different about the way we do it. We also use the interior of the church for our monthly speaker series programs that feature subject matter experts speaking on topics relevant to Jacksonville history. And we cultivate and grow a lively attendance and engaged audience for those events. This picture, also from our collection, is one of my favorites, illustrating the most significant event in Jacksonville's history, its Great Fire of 1901. Here we see then Mayor J.E.T. Bowden surveying the ashes of his city while enjoying a cigar. We commemorate that event each year with an annual 5K Great Fire Run, in which participants follow roughly the route of the original fire through downtown. That happens on the anniversary of the fire each May. The next illustration is also from our collection, and it illustrates a site that is familiar to anybody who's ever had any business at Jacksonville City Hall. Another example of a really imposing and high-value 21st century adaptation of a historic structure. This magnificent restoration is now hard at work every day, and what a loss it would have been to Jacksonville had it been demolished, as it nearly was. We illustrate Jacksonville's history in many ways with images such as this one, showing its importance as a transportation nexus. It's just one of the things that makes Jacksonville a distinctive place with its own identity. But we are inspired by the work, I mentioned our peer cities, we're inspired by the work of cities such as Tampa. And I show this image because it illustrates Tampa's History Center on the downtown Seddon Channel overlooking Cottonchobee Park, a 40,000 square foot, $40 million plus project devoted to public history, and an example of the ambitions of what was a relatively small local historical society in Tampa that has grown that project over decades. In other cities in Florida that I count as our peer cities, such as Orlando, we see the Orange County History Center, which occupies a historic 1927 courthouse, an image of that in a moment. The St. Petersburg Museum of History uses some of its meeting space and its public lecture space also for exhibitions, including an antique airplane that they are pleased to call the first commercial airliner in history. Some other cities challenge that assertion. In Orange County, they use historic postcard imagery to illustrate that city's story and brand as a travel and tourism destination that certainly continues into the 21st century. Historic identity contributes to a city's contemporary brand and helps influence people's perceptions of it as a place that they occupy for the future. In Miami, the History of Miami project occupies a downtown cultural campus that is undergoing massive expansion and growth, as is this imposing history museum in that city. Our signature project at the present is the renovation of that 3-story factory building that you see on our campus just west of the arena. We are programming the 3 levels of space in that for an expansion of all the work that we do, with 3 phases of funding, number 1 and number 2, which are complete, and number 3 still to be funded. But we work outside the walls of the History Center, as this historic site marker, just one of many all over Jacksonville, illustrates. We do it through community presentations, collaborations with schools at every level, from secondary through the university, internships, and other relationships across the city. In every setting, we advocate the message that Jacksonville's history matters. Thank you.
Great job, Dr. Bliss. I want to assure you, you will have more time with each of our speakers following their presentations. So as we transition to our next speaker, Dr. Al Dove of Mosh, the grand poobah of science specifically, I wanted to remind you the format of this is called Pachakacha, which is short for chit chat in Japanese. So this was the inspiration behind our ability to challenge our speakers and presenters to follow this format.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Al Dove. I am the privilege of serving as the CEO of Mosh. I've been in Jacksonville for fully 2.5 months, so I'm working my way through understanding the landscape here, but really when you get an introduction like the one from Diana, it's hard not to appreciate it. Our mission is to spark the joy of lifelong learning by bringing to life the sciences and regional history, and we believe firmly in that mission. So we've been in Jacksonville since 1941, since Madge Wallace shared her insect collection with children at a house in Riverside. We've been in our current building on the South Bank since 1969, when the population of Jacksonville was roughly 1/3 of what it is today. So both the museum and the city have outgrown the current Mosh facility. And it's high time that Jacksonville had a science and history museum of a scale that it befits the role that the city fulfills these days. And I get a reminder of that on every daily basis when our building tries to evict us. It has various mechanical problems. We are very much an education-driven facility, and you can see some of the numbers there about how we serve the city. I'd like to highlight the fact that we serve 92% of Title I schools in Jacksonville, and the ones that we don't typically have problems getting to us because of school bus issues. And so we've recently scored a grant to help build an outreach vehicle that will allow us to take Mosh outside the 4 walls and to the schools. So you can see here the new Mosh facility, which will actually be out the window behind the radio mast there, right on the waterfront. It is rare to get a chance to build a new museum. It is very rare to get to build one on a waterfront property, and it's a unicorn to get to build one on waterfront property in the middle of the downtown area of a major US city. So this is a fantastic opportunity for Jacksonville. And one of the things that I love about it is the way it integrates with all the other things that are happening in the east part of downtown, including the North Bank Riverwalk, which wraps right around the Mosh facility. So it will be a fantastic development and really something that befits the city. In terms of what's happening inside the museum, the downstairs part of the museum will be given over to a journey through nature and culture in this part of Florida, starting with dinosaur times. But of course, back then there were no land dinosaurs here because we were underwater. What we had instead were these terrifying prehistoric reptiles like the mosasaur here, which used to eat sperm whales for a living. So that is where we'll start our story, and it will carry through to the present day. And obviously that means that at some point along the story, humans come onto the scene. And the purpose there is to help illustrate to people that Jacksonville today and always exists as part of nature, not apart from it. And that's a very important part of the message. We'll devote some significant time to talking about the original indigenous inhabitants of this area, the Tamaqua and Makama speaking peoples, and then we'll carry through the colonial times, to present-day Jacksonville consolidation, and maybe waxing a little bit prophetic about what the future of this area might look like. And that will be all on the downstairs part of the museum that takes up the bottom floor of what we think will be about 100,000 square feet of museum exhibit space. When people have experienced that, they'll then be able to go upstairs where there'll be more hands-on exhibits that are a little bit more forward-facing. This is a quantum computer, and I don't think we'll be getting too hands-on with those, but that's where we explore the psychomotor mode of learning, where people learn by doing, by getting hands-on and manipulating things. And we'll have themes that people can explore on that top floor, themes of energy, transport, health, sport, and all through this psychomotor mode where people will be able to do various manipulative exhibits that will help them to understand and feel, especially children. It's a very dominant mode of learning in children to be able to do that. So that's the forward-looking part of the museum that will take up the top half of the floor. The campaign that goes behind this is kicked off last January. It's doing very well. We had a major fundraising deadline with DIA back in March 30th, where we had to be at $30 million, and we passed that deadline. We are well on the track to passing the $40 million DIA milestone that we have at the end of June. And that one's really important because that unlocks the land lease and allows us to begin design and construction in earnest. According to that performance schedule, we have to start construction by December of next year, which would see us complete sometime in late 2027, opening early 2028. And so many of you might have seen the recent announcement from the $10 million gift from CSX. It's a really, really important development for us because it really launches the campaign into a new chapter. This is roughly what the museum may look like from the Bay Street side, and you can see that the museum is built up as a flood mitigation technique, and there's going to be a cafe, finally. We'll have a place where people can eat and drink when they come to the museum. That'll actually be open to the public whether you go into the museum or not. On the other side, you can see how much parkland is important to this development. So it really is an indoor-outdoor space. And when Diana talks about places we can live, work, and play, this is a play space that people can really enjoy. And you can see this is looking back towards Hogan's Creek. There'll be an event lawn, places that people can gather and convene so that it is an attraction as much as it is a cultural institution destination. If you look back at the museum from the other side, from the Hogan's Creek side, so that's looking back this way, you'll see that there are some really interesting features to the property, including an area that we call the Beacon, which is part of, and so that's on the right-hand side there. You can see that little octagonal concrete pad that's in the river there. That is part of the Riverwalk system, which is connected by these beacons or nodes, and there'll be some sort of tall statuesque structure there that alludes to what's going on inside the museum, and this is part of the DIA system for connecting the nodes along the river. By working together and completing this campaign, we hope to give Jacksonville the Science and History Museum that it needs and deserves. And I really appreciate you guys allowing us to speak and present this today, including the Community Foundation in particular, and the Jags. Thank you.
As we transition to the next speaker, I want you to start leading with some questions. We're going to have lots of time for question and answers. So I wonder, or what about X? This is your prompt to start thinking about questions you might have for our three speakers. And next up, we have retired Captain Stan Halter, who's going to represent the Jacksonville Naval Museum.
Can anybody hear me? Can you hear me in the back? Okay. Oh, I do?
Yes.
It's like karaoke. Okay, I'm here to represent the USS Orleck, which you can see the top mast down there. It was the Jacksonville Historic Naval Ship Association, 2008, NPO, and the goal was to bring a ship downtown, a Navy ship of all things, and we did it. It took a while, but we did it. This has got to be the biggest secret in downtown Jacksonville. 390 feet long, 40 feet wide, and it's felt 2,250 tons without any fuel or water on it. And you can see sometimes we have to have protection. But so welcome aboard. We're open Wednesday through Sundays. This is what it looks like. Eventually, you know, we might get some asphalt and some things like that, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. And in case you don't know where this is, all of you know where the jail is, or some of you anyway that have the cards to get in. We're right across from that. So I'm ahead. So what do? Well, we bring people downtown. We had 20,000 visitors in the 10 months we've been over here, 5,000 plus in events, 20-something schools. I mean, we had 2 more this week. And there's activities that we have. Some people are having a party up here on the hangar deck. And so that was, these are things we expected to have happen. Re-enlistments, promotions, some corporate outings, some of those sort of things. What we didn't know, because we never built a museum. We had no idea what we were getting into. Weddings. New Year's Eve party, 950 people on the river dancing to watch the fireworks. Korean Armistice Day, Vietnam Veterans Day twice. And like I say, the weddings are pretty cool. But yeah, so these are kind of things we do. And then when we weren't even done yet, cutting for kids, where they cut the locks. Veteran barbers and stylists donate their time. We've done 2 of those. We're the only place in Jacksonville they had 325 flags for the Fields of Honor when we did our Salute to Veterans race. And this was Sunday. Yoga on the river. We didn't know that was coming. And one of our real proud things is we've actually managed to get the ship to the point we had our very first sleepover. We had 20 Sea Cadets from Tallahassee come down and spend the night. We're still working on some of the toilet facilities. We've got a lot of work to do. But the fact that we managed to pull this off was, quite remarkable, which is going to cause all those groups that are going to Charleston to stop here. And just a nice little picture of the ship as we start talking about this history. I'm going to make it really quick on the past. Commissioned in 1945, 79 years old, 330 people on board, 30 officers, 300 enlisted. When you go on the tour, those of you who are lucky enough to go, you got to think about that. The Orleck is famous for a couple of things. One of them is being the original train buster in Korea. The commanding officer figured out we can blow the rails up in the morning and they fix them in the afternoon. So he went out secretly on his own, parked his ship, kept all the lights off near a tunnel. And when the train came through the tunnel, you could see the sparks. As soon as it cleared, he blew up the tracks in front of the train. Then he blew up the tracks behind the train. Then he blew up the whole damn thing. And it just so happens, and we have this is going to be a brand new display up on the bridge so people can actually see this and get a feel for it. It's a really famous gunship at the time. And so in Vietnam, it fired more rounds than any other ship, any other destroyer, 11,000 rounds out of 2 sets of guns. Here's how big they are. We have a display inside a Mount 52 experience of a real firing mission off Vietnam. Floor vibrates, lights go off. This was made by a local Emmy Award winner. In addition, the Navy decided it didn't want to fight submarines like they do in World War II with depth charges, so we want to fight away from them. So the ship was converted into more of an anti-submarine warfare. This is an anti-submarine rocket launcher, but I really want you to look at this. This is a drone. There were 700 made in the world, there are 25 left. We have one of them. This is from the 60s. We were flying drones. That's amazing. So this is going to be a quick glance of some of the things we had to do to get the ship ready. Just a quick look at the bow, that Mount 52 that I was talking about, how it looks now. This is the hangar bay we had to tear up and then rebuild. So we can have events, STEAM classes and things like that, which we're going to talk about. And so what's the future like for us? Well, we put a handicap ramp in for the pier. And right now we're filling in so it's safe for people to walk on. We're going to have rails so you can actually go out in the water, no matter what condition you're in, and look at the ship. This is just giving you an idea how bad it was and some of the work we're doing with the red, white, and blue bollards. And here we go. We don't do STEM, we do STEAM. So we put seamanship in there, and we added art. We want to be able to attract and get every student. We also are CPR certified. We can train people. This is our ham radio. We talk to ships and people all over the world. So when there's no satellite communications, you can come down and talk to people. We're constantly reworking displays like the galley, sick bay. Those people aren't real. People want to say, what does a torpedo look like? So here you go. We got several of these. We got a motor whaleboat not too long ago and converted it, and we're now working on the engine so children can come by and students and look and see, oh, this is how this thing works. Lastly, I want to finish, well, not last, next to last. One of our biggest endeavors is going to be the kickoff of the Veterans Museum, in which we're going to capture the oral and video histories of veterans first in North Florida, then in the South, then nationally, so that families, veterans, they can have it recorded in due time. And we wouldn't be anywhere if it wasn't for the hundreds of volunteers that come down here. Some of this work is not very much fun, even though they're laughing. And so this shows you an idea of some of the things that people do. We've had active duty military, people who have no military experience come down to help us. And and of course, there's always some kids that want to come down, but they can't do much. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you and show you we are doing it right now. I mean, you can go on that ship today and you'll see people. We're bringing them downtown now. And we're happy when Mosh gets there because that'll make it a little bit easier. By then, we will have a parking lot. So thank you very much.
All right, so hopefully your curiosity has been piqued. You had an opportunity to hear from Diana about the importance of more art, more culture, more museums, more attractions, more opportunities for not only tourists to come downtown and experience Jacksonville and Northeast Florida, but also for our own residents to see what we have to offer on the riverfront. I am incredibly grateful to the three of you for humoring me when I offered you an opportunity to speak and present and then said you get 6 minutes and 40 seconds and 20 slides. So can you give them a round of applause for... So I'm going to open it up with a few questions that we've prepared, but I really want to hear from you all. What questions might you have for any one of these three projects? And I wanted to start by acknowledging why these three? What about the other organizations in town? So I want to put in the teaser that we are going to continue the conversation about the various ways that downtown is being activated by using future donor forums to talk about the parks. There are more than one park. And so we want to make sure that we lift up all of the organizations that are actively thinking about green spaces and connectivity through the community. So that will be a future donors forum. We're also going to talk about the other art and culture institutions downtown. So Diana spoke about a few of them. This fall, we will be lifting up the Symphony, MoCA, Mosh, the Comer, and understanding how those institutions, which are here, are also contributing to the vibrancy of our culture. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there are more to come, but today we're going to focus on the three exciting new projects that are happening in our community right now. And just of the most commonly asked questions I receive, well, what's actually happening over there? You get to know, so thank you for being in the room. So I'm going to start by acknowledging in each of your three presentations, you talked about the need for capital investments, right? So whether you had a facility or you needed to expand your facilities, you're intentionally planning for multi-purpose usage of each of your spaces. Can you speak a little bit more about the venue, rental, catering capacity, rental usage, and how you hope that will sustain your work beyond the capital investment, but also serve as revenue drivers for your work?
Yeah, certainly can. And since I have the mic, I'm going to go first. So yes, we very much regard the Mosh as being a place where we can leverage the convening power of these place-based institutions to attract people, not just to share in the mission with us, but also to create not necessarily mission-related revenue streams where people can really come and enjoy the place. And we saw a little bit about that from the Orleck and having weddings on the deck of the ship. We will seek to do the same thing at Mosh. We're particularly We're particularly focused on the roof of the building, and that location on the waterfront really gives us an unparalleled location for really powerful vistas of the city that will make the museum come alive, whether it's day or night.
Well, we're fortunate to be able to have a historic building, the old St. Andrew's Church, that we program for revenue events and weddings as well. It's a great traditional space for people who find that an appealing place to have a wedding, but who are not affiliated with an actually sanctified traditional church setting. In renovating the three-story factory building on our campus, our space programming intentions are for the first floor to be museum and exhibition space with a number of different themes related to Jacksonville's past. The second floor, a performance and event venue, and the third floor, a much expanded and badly needed state-of-the-art archives, collections, and research facility. To Tom's question, the second floor performance and event space will sort of integrate with and work in symbiosis with the exhibition space on the first floor. You saw a little bit of an example of what inspires us there with the efficient use of that meeting space and public area at the St. Petersburg Museum of History, where they incorporate displays in an area where they also have educational programming and special events. So we see that as an opportunity to use our exhibition strategically. A museum consultant has advised us about how we can have exhibitions that can actually be moved back and forth between the floors. So we plan to maximize that space in that way. Revenue from events is a part of the game for any nonprofit like ours in our space, but it's particularly relevant here in this East Side Sports and Entertainment District, is it not? Because we really see ourselves as kind of having the wind and the tide at our back in the ways that we can stimulate the activation and walkability and collaborative use and just playing off events throughout this area. So we're inspired to be doing the work that we're doing right now here on the east side of Jacksonville.
Thank you. Weddings? Weddings? Picture? Enough said. So we're looking, we're open. You can stay there now. We can. Who knew about weddings? Like I said, there are a lot of corporate events and things like that we can host. So it's kind of limited to your imagination, not ours. One of the things we'd like to see is a day on the river in which you take a water taxi and you go to the zoo, you come down the river and you go to the ship and you go to Mosh. Maybe go to the Historical Center if we can get that path all worked out. So, we're only limited really by imagination. And we know a lot of people that have some really great imaginations, like many of the people here.
Thanks, Tim.
I'd love it if we could take the ship out on the river for a day.
Yeah, I thought that's where you were going, and I was like, oh, you can hold on a minute.
All about engines and
So I think that's important as we think about the revenue model for these institutions. There's the upfront capital investment, but there's also the general operating and sustaining dollars that it will take to continue to weather these institutions as anchors downtown, whether there be a pandemic or some other type of disruption. We know that there's mixed revenue opportunities for each of the three of our panelists. As we're thinking about physical space, right? Capital investments. Can you talk a little bit about the safety and accessibility that you're taking into account for all three of your facilities? When the doors are open, if they're not already, will it in fact be open to all? How are you thinking through the well-being of your guests?
Well, certainly. Our renovation plans for the three-story factory building include elevators and ADA access. We're building outside the envelope of the original factory to construct stairwell towers for emergency ingress and egress, internal communication, and new men's and ladies' ADA restrooms in those towers that'll be air-conditioned space. Our existing facility in the old St. Luke's Hospital is also ADA accessible throughout. Interesting story that explains that is because it used to be the Congressional District Office of longtime U.S. Congressman Charlie Bennett. Anybody who knows about Congressman Bennett knows that he was mobility impaired. He experienced polio as an adult. And so when he converted the building to use as his office, it had to be accessible throughout for him. Old St. Andrew's Church is also ADA accessible. The only areas of anything that we operate that aren't are the second floor of the Merrill Museum House. To be faithful to its historic character and to its original historicity, we can get people into the ground floor, but we have to narrate the second floor to visitors there.
Well, we're a ship. Guess what? We're a bit organized. We have an emergency egress plan. We have 2 ways to get on and off the ship, no matter what would happen. Every one of our ship duty officers, 5 days a week, we have a person that's in charge of the overall operation. They are all CPR certified. They've had their background checks. And so we basically have to put safety in from the very beginning, which is why I mentioned trying to get the pier more safe. Because the pier itself had tracks on it. And I say used to be because yesterday we filled a bit for cranes to go back and forth. Well, that's a trip hazard, especially when you're starting to deal with people that are physically impaired, And well, we do attract a little bit older crowd, so perhaps they might need a little bit. So we're very concerned about that all the time. That's one of the things we talk about every week in our discussions. So.
Thanks, Dan.
So safety, is everybody's concern, right? It's safety first. So we'll have all the necessary compliances in the new Mosh building. But I also wanted to just mention that in terms of making the building accessible to all, that's not just a safety thing. It's also designing your exhibits and your interpretives in ways that everybody can benefit from. So there's a principle we call universal design these days, where instead of doing special things for special people, we try to incorporate the needs of the maximum diversity of potential visitors into the exhibit design from the beginning. So for example, if you always use colorblind friendly palettes in your exhibit interpretives, then you don't have to do something special when colorblind people come along, because you've already thought about that. So it's impossible to meet the needs of every possible group, but if you think about as many groups as you possibly can before you design your facility, then you can make it as accessible as possible to every type of guest that might want to come and benefit from what you're offering.
And what I am really impressed by is the intentionality, the thoughtfulness in which everyone is approaching their projects. All of that may increase cost a little bit, but they've taken that into account with their capital budgets and understanding that we do, in fact, want these institutions to not only open, but to be open for all and to be open for a long time. So again, my hat is off to you and your respective teams for bringing us this far. I want to talk a little bit about, it's not lost on me, the cultural corridor synergy. So we were very grateful that the Jags were willing to host us here, because you can actually look out the windows and get a sense of where these three projects are going to be, all within walking distance from the stadium. So I wanted to hear a little bit from the three of you of what, did you know about that part when you were planning your respective projects? Or were you delighted by the opportunity that there are going to be other institution anchors? You now are all friends because you've had to prep your presentations multiple times with me. They knew each other before. But can you talk a little bit about what you're hoping in terms of the activation of an entire corridor and how that might mutually benefit all three of you?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm most excited about with the new Mosh facility is the adjacency of all of these other cultural institutions and activities that there are to do in this community, which has historically been perhaps underserved by science. So it's really important, the location that we're planning to do this. And I'm really jazzed about the connective tissue that joins it all together, which is this green space that we have and the North Bank Riverwalk that will wrap around from the Orleck to Mosh and from there to the Four Seasons and beyond. So, and that's along the waterfront. And then to go back into the east side downtown neighborhoods, you've got the Emerald Trail that we're connecting to and following directly up Hogan's Creek from the confluence where the Mosh location is. So I love the way these things are all connected together, and it really will be a very walkable space, and that's really a fantastic development.
And we're very excited because people come see him, they come see them. Maybe we can get together and have a joint ticket price. Give them something to do other than so they just keep coming. Because every one of our places can continually be refreshed. And he might have one month, we might have another, you might have another. So there's always a draw. And to be able to get on the Riverwalk at the Fuller Warren and come all the way down to here, this can be pretty impressive.
The Jacksonville History Center's place in this East Side district is a 30-some-odd year story, and it is connected to the arrival of the Jacksonville Jaguars here. The original team owners, Wayne and Dolores Bar Weaver, took stock of the neighborhood around the stadium even before the stadium was renovated. And one of the things that struck Mrs. Weaver was the deteriorated state of Old St. Andrew's Church, whose steeple I've already pointed out that you can see here. The church had been built in 1888, deconsecrated by the Episcopal Diocese of Florida in the 1960s, and it had lain idle ever since then. It was in such a deteriorated state that vagrants occupied it. Campfires had been set up on the floor in the sanctuary. The doors were hanging by their hinges, stained glass windows long since broken out. It was a candidate for demolition. And it was Mrs. Weaver's determination that led to a fundraising effort and the collaboration of the city of Jacksonville to acquire the church from the diocese and restore it. It was $1 million project in 1996. You do the math and tell me what it would cost to do that project now. But it was a labor of love and a lot of in-kind support from the Contractors and Builders Association of Duval County, Mrs. Weaver, and a number of generous donors and the city. That brought the Historical Society into the role of operating and managing the church under a long-term lease from the city. The next phase then led to the relocation of the Merrill Museum House next to the church. It had been forced out of its original existing site at the corner of Lafayette Street and Forsyth, first moved to the site of what's now the pitcher's mound at the baseball grounds, and then relocated to the corner of Duval Street and A. Philip Randolph. There, the Historical Society, as we were formerly called, operated for roughly 15 years, when a board of directors before my time used some of the money that it had accumulated from a number of special events to buy our campus on the other side of the arena. It was another example of a deteriorated and endangered pair of historic buildings. And so I'd like to say that I was wise and prescient in selecting this location as a place to do our work, but honestly, I fell backwards into this. But I'm so glad that I did, that we did. We stand on the shoulders of really decades of leaders that came before us in building up the Historical Society into what we now call the Jacksonville History Center. And I can say a little bit more about that if Tom wishes. But as I said a few minutes ago, we're in a place now where the wind and tide are at our back, and they have been. And I'm filled with excitement. There is nothing but upside in our location here on the east side. It's a great opportunity to advocate for all the work we do, to collaborate with the historic east side neighborhood just north of the entertainment district here, which we do with great satisfaction, all faithful to our mission.
You can keep the mic, because if you will grant me my wish, I would love to know a little bit about the Jacksonville Historical Society and your evolution as the Jacksonville History Center, if you could speak to that.
Good question, and I asked Tom to pose that. So we were founded in May of 1929, the anniversary of Jacksonville's Great Fire, by a diverse group of Jacksonville citizens. Over 200, roughly 228 citizens of Jacksonville met in the lobby of what was then the Carling Hotel, and chartered and brought into existence the Jacksonville Historical Society. For its time, it was an extraordinarily diverse group, and it was racially and ethnically diverse. One of the charter members was Eartha M.M. White, who was the creator of what's now the Claire White Mission over in the La Villa area. And we, as I said, we owe everything to those founders. And over the decades since then, the society, the organization, grew its collections, never had a permanent home, added its first professional full-time employee in the 1990s, and we have continued to expand the staff since then. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we have gradually been rolling out a new identity as the Jacksonville History Center. How come? Other local history societies have awakened to what troubled some of us about the connotation of the word society. It suggests a group of people in a room behind closed doors selecting the stories of the past and spinning them in a way that conforms to their particular idea about the city in the past and the present. It suggests, frankly, a group of fusty old people sitting around and waxing nostalgic about the past and selecting the stories that they like the most. That isn't who we are. It isn't who we should be. It isn't what a city as complicated as Jacksonville ought to be. What we are and what we strive to be is widely inclusive and ambitious in telling the stories of a place that has plenty of stories that are thrilling, exciting, appealing, magical, but also tragic. And all of those stories account for this city's identity. That's why we have pivoted to the identity of the Jacksonville History Center with great respect for all the generations of people who have gotten us to where we are. This is the identity for us in the 21st century going forward.
Thanks, Alan. While we may have talked about the question, I actually didn't know the answer. So thank you. Stan, when we were prepping for this, we were also trying to understand any confusion or clarifying confusion when people are trying to understand the Naval Museum, the Veterans Museum, which you spoke to, and the USS Orleck. So how are you navigating the multiple names or the different projects that you're facilitating underneath this one banner? And what is the parent banner?
Yeah, the Jacksonville Historic Naval Ship Association is the nonprofit. And our first subsidiary is the Jacksonville Naval Museum, which includes the ship. Because the museum itself can then start dealing with, perhaps we can get the sail from the USS Jacksonville submarine and bring it down. So the museum itself is a little bit broader, but the Orleck is the centerpiece. The Veterans Museum is also going to be a wholly owned subsidiary of the Jacksonville Historic Naval Ship Association because, well, we have a lot of veterans come down. And you wouldn't believe this, but there are veterans that work at ViStar and at UNF. And we're going to have an opportunity to capture their histories at their sites as in the beginning of this process, which I believe is June 6th, 2024. But I'll let somebody else that's here talk about that later. But so that's really what it is. We intended to be able to have the small group, not a society, but the small group to sort of oversee and move best business practices between these various groups. And then, of course, be able to work with the Cultural Council and things like this to start bringing these things in. Because it's all about Jacksonville. That's really what it is. That's why we live here. Where's Isaiah? He's only been here a couple months, but I don't think he's, there you are. Yeah, I think you're pretty happy here. Yeah, you're not gonna leave for a while, so that's what that's all about.
So my next question relates to the fact that you are navigating an interesting period of time in the history of Mosh's history, right? You have a current museum that is open and entertaining guests and families every single day. And you're also drawing a lot of attention of the new shiny penny. So can you talk a little bit about how you're navigating those two and that bridge of time between now and January of 28, or roughly 2028?
Yes, I can talk about that. It occupies pretty much every minute of my day at the moment. So how do you do this business where you have to run a current going museum while you're building a new one across the river? And from a fundraising perspective, that's a peculiar challenge because everybody likes to give to the new shiny, but we still need operating funds to keep the current museum going. And I have to thank the Cultural Council for their incredible support of the museum over time. It's one of our biggest sources of operating support, other than the gate that we get from people coming in. So this is a peculiar time, and there is this sort of strange dynamic tension between really trying to build something new and spectacular in one hand and raise all the funds that you need for that. And the campaign, I have to be honest, has been extraordinarily successful, due in large part to the efforts of the campaign cabinet, Jill Davis and Maureen Mershow, our Chief Development Officer, who's here today. It's an amazing campaign, but we still have to serve the community, and we have to serve the students. We have our VPK kids on site every day at the moment, so it is a bit of a struggle on the operations side of things, and we don't expect that situation to improve. Honestly, the closer we get to breaking ground on the new museum, the more the donations for operations will tend to dry up, whereas the donations for the new museum will tend to increase. At some point, we will go into chrysalis, is the way we think about it. Right? We're going to have to wind up operations at the existing museum and get ready to emerge as the butterfly across the river. So that's a tactical decision we'll have to face at some point. When do we do that? How do we do that? These are the things that occupy my mind, usually at about 2:30 in the morning. So when I can't sleep for many other reasons. So it's a peculiar challenge, but it's something that we're ready for. We've got a great team. We have a fantastic board. One of the things that really drew me from Atlanta, where I had been working at Georgia Aquarium, down to here to be part of the Mosh project was the board that we have. And it's amazing as I go around the city, how many times I meet people who say, oh yeah, I used to be on the board for Mosh. It's all over the place. So this really is Jacksonville's museum. And I feel the weight of that legacy every day. And I'm looking forward to honoring that and helping to deliver the museum that the city so richly deserves.
Thank you. So, and I'm glad you just did this organically. We are very careful and stand true to the commitment that Donors Forum is a non-solicitation event. So we are very careful, and I asked all of them not to bring any particular facts and figures, and certainly not an ask, because this isn't the intention of this forum. But I wanted to make sure that you knew that there was in fact momentum, and if you are interested in connecting with any one of the three gentlemen about their respective projects, I wanted to make sure you're doing so eyes wide open around their current operating needs, their current and future capital needs, and also their future operating needs once they're in the new facility. So thinking long-term about what these institutions will mean for our community is a challenge I would ask each of you as you're thinking about what support you might be considering for these three organizations. So with that, I want to open it up to questions. My teammate Socrates is going to be running around with a mic. We encourage you to use the mic so we can hear your question. And for our friends who are going to watch the recording, that is how we're capturing all the audio. So even though I can project my voice, this is for all of our friends who are going to be able to watch the video. Thanks, Dave.
Remediation of the east side of this area has always been a major stumbling block for development. The cost of it has always seemed to prevent development there. Suddenly we have development, so I wonder, how is the cost of land remediation being dealt with? Is that part of the $40 million campaign? Is the city agreed finally to undertake the remediation? Just curious how that is being handled.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have great detail for you about that with respect to Mosh. There certainly was some remediation that's necessary, but right now we've got a lease agreement from the city, so I imagine that responsibility largely falls to the city. But at some point during the geotechnical phase, I'm sure we'll learn exactly what extent that is and to what degree we need to consider that in our construction plans. But I don't have a great deal of detail for you about that question, but it's certainly something that we're aware of, given the history of the location in the shipbuilding industry. So
We don't dig down below 18 inches. Okay, we don't do that because that's where the layer is, the protective layer. When it does come time for the city to put in its visitor center and restaurants, yes, they definitely will take care of that. And the site where we're at is regularly monitored by, I think it's FEMA, send some people down. And anyway, we've got all these spots down there that they can come and check it. So yeah, we just make sure we don't disturb any of that potentially bad stuff.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
Good question, David. For us, of course, it's a non-issue with the city-owned property where the church and the Merrill House stand. On the campus on the west side of the arena, we are distinct from our colleagues in the sector here on the east side because we own that property free and clear. That means that has its upsides and its downsides. I don't have to worry about the city as a landlord on the one hand. It has had a downside in that it means as a 501c3 nonprofit, we are ineligible for any of the development incentives in the toolbox of the Downtown Investment Authority. Their incentives are tailored for-profit enterprises that generate an ROI according to their metrics in generating employment and visitation. On the other hand, we still have to comply with all the bulk requirements of the DIA for redevelopment and the DDRB. And so ask me when we have 20 or 30 minutes how that process went, but we are completely through that. And yes, site remediation having to do with any of the legacy issues about soils in the downtown area of the east side, those have not been an impediment for our development.
Thank you.
So each of you sit in the shadow of what will likely be the stadium of the future. How are you planning for that?
Looking forward to it with great anticipation and enthusiasm. It's just, I'd say, probably the very centerpiece of what inspires us to think that we have arrived at the scene of a wonderful opportunity to make the most of Jacksonville. The Stadium of the Future is one component of many, but it certainly is the keystone for what's happening in the east side. So I'm an advocate and an enthusiast and strongly supportive of that effort.
I want to get that Four Seasons built right now so we can have more people come down here, stay there, and come down to all these venues so they have a place to eat. I can't tell you how many times folks come up to us and say, well, where should I go eat? Because they're from Baker County or any place out of town. And if they have children, I say, go to Sweet Pete's. You'll have a great time. But it would be nice to be able to direct them a few other things. And I think the stadium's going to do that. So yeah, we can't wait, because then when the CBS drone flies over the riverfront as it heads to the stadium and it goes right over our ship that's fully illuminated, it's going to be pretty cool.
That's going to be awesome. So I really view these cultural institutions as a really important adjunct to the plan for the new stadium. So that stadium has its main. Of course, the Jags operating every day, but on those football Sundays, that's
Speak it into existence. We're
Sorry.
manifesting a Super Bowl hope. Okay.
So those football Sundays are really important, but there need to be reasons to come to this area on any given day, on Idle Tuesday, that you might want to come. And I had some good experience with this in Atlanta, where they created the new Braves Stadium in Cobb County with a very poor amount of community consultation, I might add. But these days, I think nobody would even suggest going back. And it's not because of the stadium per se, it's because of the Battery, which is this area around the stadium where they put the restaurants, they put a concert venue, they put a bowling alley, they put multiplex theater. There's all sorts of reasons. My family goes to the Battery all the time just to do things there. So the football stadium can be the anchor, but it's all of these things that pop up around it, whether they're lifestyle related or whether they're cultural institutions per se. It's really that emergent property of all of this critical mass that happens together, and it really does need an anchor. And I guess the stadium is going to be that anchor for this area.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan.
I think that the fire museum is still in front of the ship, right? And that poor fire museum has been moved, I don't know, 3-4 times.
Well,
is it still going to be there? Is that still a thing? What's going to happen with that building?
there's a long pause here because there's an undercurrent. It was dropped the same time we showed up. When we were making our plans to move the ship, it wasn't there. It wasn't planned to be there, but it's there. And we think that there could be a significant opportunity to do something unlike seen by anyone. And I'm gonna leave it at that. I guess I'm the only one at the fire museum, so I'm okay.
This is the hot potato. Of
Well, here's
here's
an interesting fact. You may not know this. You showed the 1901 fire. That fire museum used to be a firehouse, and all the firemen lived in the area, and the area was all African American. It's actually on some African American historical site list. So there is a great story to tell right there.
Okay, thanks. Nancy.
Hi. Thanks for all the information, and I'm excited about the emphasis on so much of Jacksonville's history. And I have two related, maybe a related question, one of which I should know the answer to, but we've heard about a Museum of Southern Music History, and I'm not sure if that's part of what you're doing, Alan, or not, but if somebody could talk about that. And then the second question related is, how are you all coordinating as to what part of Jacksonville's history you're telling so that it all complements one another versus competing?
Thanks, Nancy. The reference to the Museum of Southern, I don't remember what you called it. There have been a number of different iterations. So about 3.5 or 4 years ago, a couple of members of our board of directors were inspired by the idea of implementing music history as a significant project of interpretation for our museum. And we were averse, after considerable thought, to the idea of making it all about Southern music, particularly, and the emphasis was Southern rock. Jacksonville has a brand that's associated with Leonard Skinner, which is a distinctive Southern rock performance group, and certainly old enough now to be qualified as historic. However, the Jacksonville History Center is not just about music history. And Jacksonville's history is not just about music history. It is one of the doorways into understanding some of the really cool, interesting, inspiring, creative stories of this past and explaining things that really cross over the boundaries of just music into other aspects of culture, business, enterprise, technology. I mean, music history is tour group promoters, it's record stores, it is technology, it's radio and broadcasting, it's performance venues. There's so much about that. And so our intent is to make Jacksonville's music history broadly construed, one of the regular exhibition themes within the museum space, the exhibition space, but it's not the only story. And your other question was, oh, well, there's an opportunity for Dr. Dove and I to collaborate. So I have had pretty much a running conversation with the leadership of the Museum of Science and History really since before I even took up my role. Dr. Dove's not immediate, but predecessor, Maria Hain, and I talked about ways that we could clarify the lanes of traffic in terms of Jacksonville's history storytelling. Her successor, Bruce Fafard, and I picked up the conversation when he took up his role. And now that Dr. Dove is here, I look forward to resuming those conversations. And he and I actually have made plans to get together for lunch and have a chance maybe to chat about those and other things next week. So I see, though, having worked with the consultants over the past several years that have been at work on some of the proposed storytelling concepts for the MOSH, I can see ways that we can clarify the lane of traffic and complement each other's work in a way that'll leverage our resources. And so I'm very confident that we have a lively and fruitful collaboration ahead of us. Maybe Dr. Dove would like to disagree with me about that.
No, I just wanted to ask if Dr. Bliss has in his photo collection any pictures of Mosasaurus, because that would be really cool. But I guess 65 million years ago, they didn't have even glass negatives back then. But no, I'm very much looking forward to having that conversation about how we complement this stuff. Obviously, when we talk about history, we talk about prehistory as well, right? We start talking about the natural setting for Jacksonville, which goes back hundreds of millions of years. So, but yeah, there's tremendous opportunity here for collaboration and to make sure that these things are all not just complementary, but really synergistic, so that we can really tell the best story that we can. So.
Yeah, and Stan, can you speak? You may have said this in your presentation. The uniqueness of the museum in downtown. How many other cities in Florida have a ship? Right.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you didn't mention the word ship, so I was asleep.
I was watching your face. I was like, we're not resonating. I don't know what's happening.
This is the only naval warship in the state of Florida. If you start looking at North Carolina and Wilmington, the ones in Charleston, Mobile, you have to go miles and miles and miles to sweep in the number of people we have in Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Pensacola. They'll go to Mobile. You know what I mean? So they don't really count. But so we have considerably larger population to draw from than any of those other museums. And it's really a matter of just letting people know. We actually had a call I did the other day, seems like the other day, from the Crystal Museum in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they want to have a reciprocal arrangement with us. I'm going like, well, okay. So somebody from Tampa comes up, he goes, yeah, they come up all the time. They tell me all about your ship. Oh, well, that's cool. So does that answer?
Yeah, and I think it's just interesting to the previous question around how are you integrating naval history, right? So the identity of Jacksonville and our roots in the armed forces.
Tom, may I add something
Absolutely.
to that? And I would echo what Captain Halter said and amplify it. It had long seemed to me that it was kind of a scandal that a great Navy town like Jacksonville did not have a museum ship. They exist in other places. It's a challenging project, not an easy thing to pull off. This guy knows that better than any of the rest of us. But really, so much of Jacksonville's story stands on its historic relationship with the United States Navy. Other branches of the military, I don't mean to slight those, but this is a great Navy town, and a significant amount, I estimate, over 30% of Jacksonville's regional political economy stands on its relationship with the Department of Defense and especially the Navy. And so having the Orleck here is something that I anticipated, and I'm a staunch supporter and enthusiast, and really congratulate that group for all the work they've done. I've been a member of the Jacksonville Historic Naval Ship Association for, I don't know, 15 years or so. Yeah. Anyway, good work, and I'm with you.
Thank you. I also want to point out we're the third largest concentration of Navy. Okay, everybody thinks about the airplanes and the ships. Well, Kings Bay is included in that. At Blount Island, all the prepositioned ships that the Marine Corps uses, where they put all their guns and tanks and things, and they put them out. And so whenever there's a crisis, these ships sail out to it, and the Marines fly in on it. That's all out of Blount Island in Jacksonville. And when you start taking a look at, even when you go over to Camp Landing, and there's been a lot more than just Navy that we can draw from. But primarily it's Navy. I mean, you know, I'm getting a check.
Go ahead, Mark.
So I have
Yep.
one Mosh-specific question, then one that's more broad for all of you. So you painted some broad strokes about the first and second floor. Are you planning to continue the planetarium, bringing that over, improving it in the new build? And then you've always had rotating exhibition space, or is that part of your plan? And then for all of you, how are you thinking about, you know, cutting edge technology in your institutions for not just the interactive qualities, but, you know, 100,000 square feet is 100,000 square feet. Obviously, like the ability to continually change your exhibits can be leveraged by, you know, some of these cutting edge technologies like holographics and other things like that. So how are you thinking more broadly about those types of things across your institutions?
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk about that, because the limitations of the Pechacucho format, I couldn't fit it in. But so yes, we very much would like to have a planetarium. Our current planetarium is very special. It's the only remaining, I think, truly hemispheric single lens planetarium that's around. But honestly, planetarium technology has come a long way, and I've been to some recent ones that just would blow your mind. That 4 times 8K projectors on an incline screen. So we're looking towards developing a multifunction theater that can serve that planetarium function, but can also be a lecture theater or a place where that we could even have events on the floor. So yes, we very much would like to do that, and that'll be a part of the design. You referenced some of the other things that we might want to do in terms of leveraging technology. One of the things that we need to do in the new museum is think about how people experience a museum on their phone, because those aren't going away. And so augmented reality technology, for example, on a phone allows you to point your phone at a museum exhibit and have that exhibit come to life. So imagine a mammoth skeleton where when you point your phone at it, the mammoth grows fur and begins to bellow and all that sort of stuff. So the museum exists not just in physical space, but also in virtual space, and we need to be mindful of that at all times. But yes, the planetarium will very much be part of the show. We'll also have a rotating exhibit space. I will tell you that I think that current MOSH has become over-reliant on its rotating exhibit space, and the traveling exhibits, they can detract from the permanent exhibition and the permanent collection management. So my philosophy is very much that you invest in your permanent collection and your permanent exhibits first, create a compelling reason for people to come and to come back, and use those traveling exhibits only as an adjunct to that really excellent permanent collection. So that's my philosophy and what I hope to bring to the new museum. So.
If you come to Combat Information Center on board the USS Orleck, hopefully in about 4 months, we may have our first hologram. We have a gentleman who's an Emmy Award-winning videographer, I guess you'd call it. Had done a lot of stuff in his past, and this is kind of like his last let's have fun. And so he's guiding us to a lot of these things, the QR codes and things like that. And we only been here 10 months, so we don't know what we're doing. So we're still trying to figure it out. And it's like you just got to keep going. We had a very small staff, and and with all these events and things like that, we get pretty taxed, which is a good thing. I'd rather be tired than bored.
Thanks, Dan.
One of the cool things about arriving at the scene of creating museum and exhibition space in 2024 is that we're at the intersection of time and technological innovation. And over the past 20 or 30 years, and I have visited your previous institution in Atlanta and admire the work that's done there, but man, there are so many cool things that we can do with technology to represent the people and events of the past that were just not within the scope of technological innovation as recently as 5 or 10 years ago. And the experiences that I have observed in other museums around the country in recent years have led me to really, I was a little bit worried that 4,500 square feet on the ground floor of our factory building wouldn't be enough to be able to do some of the work that we're ambitious to do. I'm satisfied now that we can do a tremendous amount in that floor plate and in the floor plate of the space above. Holographic projections, digital imagery, 3D modeling of sites and scenes, and projection of activities. I have seen technology that uses a tabletop 3D representation of an urban downtown core. And this has been deployed. I'll tell you where I saw it. It was at the Visitor Center of the Water Street Tampa project in downtown. If anybody hasn't visited that, what a stunning place. It's almost literally on fire. But the analogy holds. How come? Because I can see how that is an example of an exhibit that could be used to represent Jacksonville's Great Fire in a way to model its start, its progress, its destructive effect, and then the Renaissance that followed that. And to tell the story of the Great Fire in a way that allows people to visualize that, the best we could do 10 or 15 or 20 years ago was a static model. We can do light years more than that with the technology that's available now. I feel on fire about the prospects of that.
I just wanted to add a postscript thought to that. One of the things that is going to completely transform the way we do this kind of work is artificial intelligence. I think it's going to touch every part of our lives. But imagine in a museum context, instead of a static exhibit, you could have a deep fake AI video where you can have a conversation, a free-form language conversation with a historical figure. That's going to be normal at museums before very long. And so we already have to be sort of thinking about that and future-proofing our plans so that as these technological revolutions take place, and it is getting so fast that it's hard to keep up with. But I just would invite you to imagine a museum experience where you are having conversations in natural language with historical figures on a screen. And it's mind-boggling. I absolutely agree with Dr. Bliss about what you can do with technology, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of that. So.
We're going to take our final question from the audience.
This is a Mosh question too. So, any nonprofit that's going through a capital campaign, you're building something and it gets built, your operating budget's going to go up. So how much of the campaign is going to be committed to endowment, or is that the next campaign?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the endowment chapter is hopefully what comes after we've met all the capital needs to get the new museum built. We hope to leverage that momentum of the campaign, and it really has been very successful, into building an endowment that can help us support that. It's true that the operating expenses will go up, but so will attendance and revenues according to that, and having a better designed space that we can use more effectively to generate revenue that can support the operations of the museum is really, really important. But we really would like to diversify our operating budget. Right now, it's a little too gate dependent. We would like to get other sources, and endowment yield would be a great way to do that. Drawing from, your annual draw that you get from your endowment would be super. So we would very much like to leverage that successful campaign into building an endowment, and it really is an important part of the future economic model for the museum. So.
Do you want to speak to either of that?
No.
Okay.
Well, wanting to respect Tom Curran's mandate to avoid getting too far down into the grassroots of fundraising, I would say that capital campaigns they're not easy, but they're easier than operating budget campaigns. It's always easier to raise money for bricks and mortar, is it not, than it is for operating. I'm a former university professor who was obliged to reinvent himself as a fundraiser about 6 years or so ago. So I have learned those lessons in the trenches. But we have been mindful about pivoting from the capital campaign effort, and all along being mindful of the obligation to make sure that we are creating an enterprise that's sustainable for the long haul. This isn't just about getting a building done and then turning on the lights and waiting for gate revenue to sustain it. Gate revenue, entry revenue, tickets, whatever you want to call it, is a significant component of any kind of public-facing exhibition space. The Mosh is a great model for that. So too is the Orleck project. We'll be entering more into that space, but eventually the successor leadership people in my organization, I want them to step into a sustainable operation. So I'm mindful of that as we're going about the rest of our work of development.
So good. Best way to answer a question about a fundraising question was to not. Brilliant, brilliant. All right. You would have never known. You weren't a professional fundraiser for years. I want to say thank you all for joining us. Can we give our guests a round of applause? This hopefully whet your appetite for wanting to know more, and we are committed to connecting you to these three gentlemen and their teams to ensure that you can carry on these conversations, whether it be operating support, capital needs, or endowment. There is an institution in town I've heard of who's celebrating their 60th birthday and tends to know a little bit about endowment management. So I'm glad that the questions are in the room thinking about how do we ensure that we not only build but sustain the capital investments, but also the critical team and amazing leaders who are behind all of those. So again, round of applause to the three of you and your teams. Thank you. I want to quickly acknowledge our next donors forum is on May 20th. So in 19 days from now, we will be visiting the topic of impact investing and the opportunities that are available to us locally. We're doing that in partnership with our friends at the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund. An invitation will be in your inbox, if not this afternoon, tomorrow morning. So as soon as this event is over. And lastly, I want to close with, for those who are able and willing and excited, we are going to move our vehicles. So we'll take a 3/4 of a mile, not even, half a mile drive over to the Orleck. We do encourage you, they've opened their doors for free for us to enjoy a tour of the facility. So we hope that you will join us. And again, thank you all for coming. Yes, sir. That is a pro tip. There is a restroom, but as a pro tip from someone who's been on the ship, if you would like to use the restroom before you depart for the Orleck, that was well done. Thank you all for so much for coming. I look forward to seeing you on May 20th.